this is the push they're looking for as you go into Kansas City, a team that's struggling on offense. So is this a game that you feel that the Bills defense can create enough havoc against Patrick Mahomes, who they've been struggling? They are not scoring over 20 points right now.
Yeah, the Chiefs have lost 3 out of their last 5. And I think that the Bills can totally capitalize on that. And, I'm sure we're going to get into this stat because I know that you have been tweeting about it throughout the last week, but you do not want to play Patrick Mahomes coming off of a loss. But on the flip side, Sean McDermott is 6-0 coming off of the bye, for what that's worth. Now, all those games have been at home and they've been against lighter opponents, but that is something to keep track of here, that McDermott typically does pretty well following his team's bye because they have that extra week to prepare. And the thing that has been motivating me, and I said this before the Eagles game when I said I feel like the Bills are going to be 7-6, and I ultimately decided that they were going to drop the Philly game but win Kansas City because they've seen Kansas City so many times. I mean, this is like a yearly appearance where it's kind of like a divisional opponent by now, where they're seeing them at least once or twice, depending on the playoffs. So if you give Sean McDermott an extra week to scheme up against Patrick Mahomes, who hasn't been playing his best football, same with the rest of their offense, I like my chances.
I do too. What is your biggest reason you like your chances? You've said it kind of now. I mean, a couple weeks, for now. Like tell us why. You obviously said, if they do go ahead and lose to the Eagles game, you do think they'll rip off 5. But let's talk about the Chiefs game specifically. Why are you the most confident, and were a couple weeks ago, that the Bills would win? What specifically jumps out to you?
Well, I think for the reasons that we already mentioned, like I just said, number one, they've seen the Chiefs so many times now. And number two, McDermott had that extra week to prepare for them. And then number 3, with the injuries and all those guys getting healthy. And I'm going to throw a fourth one in there, and that might be able to, translate into a new topic of conversation here. Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady having that extra week to prepare is going to be huge, because I've really liked what I've seen so far from the Bills offense since Brady has taken over for Dorsey. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, I wonder what Joe Brady's been doing over these last couple of weeks, because for as much as guys go on vacation or try to get away from it, I bet Joe Brady has just been soaking it all up and saying, hey, it's go time. And what have we done well? What have we not done well? And how can I get better? How can I absorb the playbook a little bit better? How can I be a better play caller? And that really excites me for Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is humming. There's no way around it. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It is what you're looking for going into a big stretch of games. Like, it's that simple. After the games last week that were played where the Bills were on bye, the offense now sits at 3rd in the league offensively, right neck and neck with Miami, who obviously had a pretty big onslaught against Washington. And then, both of them are actually a big chunk behind San Francisco and DVOA. So that's going to be a pretty interesting note. And then still they're saying that the Chiefs are 4th DVOA offensively, a little step behind Miami and Buffalo, but they're still getting it done. I mean, mainly because of Patrick Mahomes. The pass catching options there have just struggled. Rashee Rice has been a good pick for the Kansas City Chiefs, but Valdez Scantling's been poor. Kadarius Toney's been a poor trade. Richie James has done nothing. Sky Moore's been a bad pick. Justin Watson's helped at times. Noah Gray and Blake Bell, they're backup tight ends. I mean, they're there. Jerick McKinnon's been hurt. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's been, by all accounts, a tough pick for them. You're down to basically Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, and then Rashee Rice. So it's been a pretty man who's all on the injury report this week with it did not participate. So we'll check in on Isaiah Pacheco as well as Donovan Smith, their starting left tackle. And we'll get our guest's opinion on this very shortly here coming up on the Going Deep Buffalo podcast. So we'll kind of get their opinion from inside the team on their injuries and what they're expecting. And then obviously they had a pretty big injury as well with Brian Cook, a nice looking 2nd-round safety from last year. By all accounts is at least out a few weeks. So they're already going to the backups there. Drew Tranquil's has a concussion as well as Bolton's kind of working his way back. So they're getting thinner in the back 7 when it comes to starting off the season strong in Kansas City. So a lot to talk about here coming up soon. But I think one of the most interesting points, Kevin, is that defense going to be able to stop Josh Allen?
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City's defense has been one of the driving forces behind their success this year. And that's weird to say because Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. But I was looking at the numbers, and the team ranks are very, very similar. And it's kind of skewed because the Bills' offense was just so abysmal with Ken Dorsey. And when I was looking at these rankings today, I'm thinking that this game is going to come down to the wire.
It will. Will Dawson be back? I do believe Dawson Knox is back. I've been told this was the game he's been targeting. We'll see if that's all clear. But as far as everything I've heard, they do expect Dawson Knox to be ready and able to go. I do expect him to get activated as well. Like I said, AJ Klein's a likely cut candidate. As far as Elam, I mean, now with Dane Jackson, like a couple weeks ago, there was some injury issues at the cornerback, short-term injuries at the cornerback position, but there's really just not, there's not a position there with Dane back. Obviously, Christian Benford's fine. Rasul Douglas, Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, Saran Neal playing special teams, Taylor Rapp back. I don't really see where the DB spot is for him at this point, and I don't even know who they cut. You're already going to need to cut AJ Klein. I don't know where this extra cut's going to come from on this roster at the moment. So it's will they cut? I mean, I have no idea to get Elam back on the roster. So maybe they're going to let Elam play out probably on that 3-week window first before they activate him to see if there's any more DB injuries. And if not, maybe they'll make their determination at that point what to do. So there's a lot to see what happens with the roster, because at the moment there's really only and that's cutting AJ Klein. I really don't see another path to the roster for anybody, especially after Knox has to take a healthy roster spot from somebody. So there's a lot to break down from Brandon Beane's end, which is the good problem to have where there's been no additional injuries at this stage, but you're coming off a bye. That's really important. Patrick Mahomes does not lose after a loss. He hasn't done it in 2 full seasons now in 44 games. He hasn't lost coming off of a loss. So it's something that's it's meant to be broken, but it's not ideal. It's just something but their record in general isn't something you generally see from the Kansas City Chiefs at this stage. So it's a kind of an interesting set of statistics that are you need to break down. Like you mentioned, Sean McDermott being 6-0, Mahomes being 19-4 in December, 16-3 off of a loss, and then 44 games since he's lost back to back. Those are some pretty daunting trends for the Kansas City Chiefs if you look at it on a Bills perspective. So something's got to give. That bye. The reason the bye matters to me is players are healthy. You're seeing it right now. They're rested. They're relaxed mentally and physically. It isn't just like you get 2 weeks to game plan for the Chiefs. It's that you come back full strength. And the Chiefs had a pretty big battle, Kevin. You saw a loss against Green Bay going up to Green Bay, and you saw a lot of players getting in and out of the lineup like the Bills had to deal with, basically for the majority, like in that Jacksonville game, for instance. That Bills-Jacksonville game reminded me a lot of the KC Green Bay game, where the Bills were just losing their starting level defenders throughout the game. Kansas City didn't look great on defense against Jordan Love. Will that trend continue, or will they revert back to the defense that you're used to seeing in the beginning of the season? So where is your head at as you enter this week? Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling optimistic? Are you feeling like this is a do or die moment?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, this is must-win territory, and I want to talk about the team stats and the rankings a little bit here, but I want to go back to a couple of comments that I've seen first. I saw, where is it right here, from Thomas, asking if Fournette is ever going to play. And to your point about trying to find that roster spot for Kaiir Elam, I mean, I guess this is a good problem to have now, because the Bills were getting so thin that they were calling guys off the street. And, someone like Linval Joseph, now, albeit he's been great. It's been a great pickup. He's a big body, and that's been a huge addition on that defensive line. But it was getting very thin on that defensive side and just on the team in general. So now that these guys are getting healthy again, that's a good problem to have, that you still have someone like Leonard Fournette floating around on the practice squad. And I think that's also a testament to Ty Johnson being able to perform so well, especially in Joe Brady's offense, because he's been finding ways to utilize Ty Johnson. So before I get into the team stats here, Kev, do you think that the Bills could roll with 4 running backs, or is the only path for Fournette to simply take over Ty Johnson's spot?
I think that there was a path for him previous to the swap at coordinator. I don't believe there's a current path for him outside of one of them short-term, long-term injury from one of the 3 running backs. I think more ideally for him, he would swap in with Latavius Murray, even on a 1-game basis, like you've seen with Hardy, like you've seen obviously with, Hardy getting swapped out for Isabella, or like you can see across the defense at times. I think that's like you saw with Kyrie Elam earlier on this year with different players. I like with Josh Norman. I think you see the same now with maybe Fournette comes in for Murray. I don't really know. I mean, he's a good pass blocker. Can he do things better? I think it's interesting to see him in the offense. But I think Ty Johnson, with what he provides a little bit on returning, kind of the speed element, I don't see the 1-for-1 swap there. So I think Ty Johnson's safe. So then it comes down to, obviously, Damian Harris is already on IR. You're not going to really touch James Cook. I think it comes down to if they'd want Murray or Fournette on a game-to-game basis. Maybe you give Fournette a game here coming up, whether it's this game or Dallas in the snow, if it's going to snow, or New England, but you are going to give Fournette a chance here to swap out. Otherwise, I mean, I guess at this stage, you've seen it before. You may release him from the practice squad if you're not even going to call him up to dress to see what he can do, even on a game-to-game basis. So at this stage, I don't believe Fournette's going to ever play at the moment. But the only way would be to inactivate Murray. I don't think you go with Cook, Murray, and Fournette. I think the Murray for Fournette swap would be one that they'd be interested in. I don't know, but maybe they'll give him on a 1-game basis with Johnson too. I'm not sure, but I do think that it's a chance you see him soon. But I just, like we said, I don't even see the roster spots right now. Even for Knox, you do have to cut a healthy linebacker for Knox. I don't see one for Elam, and I just don't see one at the moment. The way the offense is playing, I just don't see one here for Leonard Fournette. So we'll see if they want to try a 1-game thing. But other than that, I don't see anything more than maybe a game trial for Leonard Fournette, and we'll have to see if it's this week against Kansas City or they don't even give him that, Kevin.
Yeah, that's a good point about Latavius Murray, because I think they do really like Ty Johnson. And let's not forget, they really appreciate when guys, like in this scenario, the running backs can play special teams. And I think Ty Johnson offers a little bit more versatility in that regard. So I would agree. If it's getting to a point where Latavius Murray shows his age as the oldest running back in the NFL, the Bills might look to try to juice up the offense and say, okay, why don't we give him the week off? And now Leonard Fournette can come in. And I think the big thing between those two running backs is who is better at pass protection. And then obviously who is better with carrying the ball, because sometimes Murray gets stopped for only a gain of 2 or 3. But for the most part, he's been effective. I've liked Latavius Murray. But again, if it gets to the point where maybe he's slipping up in pass protection or he's just showing his age, they might look to get Fournette in, like you said, against the Chargers or the Patriots. But now that these guys are getting healthy, I don't see any open roster spots where it's like, oh yeah, we'll just carry 4 running backs today. I think it's going to have to be a 1-for-1.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen, is a 1-for-1 swap or an injury or someone's being unproductive. But their path hasn't been there right now for Fournette. So we'll see if at all anything changes. Kevin, let's time to bring in some team stats. Let's bring up some of the numbers as we welcome in Ron here shortly.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to pull up my my Twitter feed here, because I just tweeted this before we came on about an hour or so ago. Can you see those tweets okay?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. It wasn't popping up on my screen. So yeah, in terms of total offense, the Bills are 4th. Kansas City is 8th. Passing offense, Buffalo is 5th. Kansas City is 8th. Rushing offense, Buffalo is 10th. Kansas City is 16th. And then scoring, Buffalo is averaging 27.3 points per game, which is 5th in the league. Kansas City is down this year. They are only averaging 22.9 points per game, which ranks 11th. So before I scroll down to the defense here, Kevin, what are your initial thoughts on that? Because when I was looking at this, I was like, okay, I know Kansas City has had some off weeks here, but let's not forget, Buffalo had many off weeks during the Ken Dorsey era. And the fact that the Bills offense is still ranked as high as they are in a lot of these categories, that kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's top 10 in every metric. So it's really interesting, no matter what you use, box score, eye test, even it's top 10 in every metric. You have a top 2 to 3 to 2 right now with the injuries quarterback playing. You have 1 and 2 potentially playing in this game. But the thing that jumps out the most is the fact that they're ahead of Kansas City and all the box score stats. They're ahead of them in most advanced stats. That is not something I expected to see from a 6-6 team. I'd expect there's to be big disparities between a lot of these, especially rushing. I mean, I know Isaiah Pacheco's gotten going at times, but they just have not had much success offensively at this stage in Kansas City. And as far as it goes for the Bills offense, they've been better than most people want to feel like they have. I mean, I know people have been thinking about the last 2 weeks, but they've been pretty good by and large for the majority of the season. And they had to adjust to some defensive lapses early on this season with the injuries. Pretty much in the middle of the season from weeks 5 to 12, they had to really amount some defensive injuries.
Yeah, and I was even more surprised looking at the defensive stats. So let's get into those now. So, in terms of total defense, Kansas City is 4th. They are giving up just under 300 yards per game. Buffalo is 12th. They have dropped a little bit since those major injuries, but again, still they're in the top half. And then passing offense is a little bit more even here. Kansas City is ranked 6th. Buffalo is 8th. Rushing, they're about the same. Kansas City is 19th. Buffalo is 20th. And then scoring, the Chiefs are only allowing 17.3 points per game, which ranks 3rd in the league. And then Buffalo is right behind them. They are top 5, only giving up 18.9 points per game. So, and then real quick, I might as well just get into the turnovers here. So takeaways, Buffalo is tied for 2nd in the whole league with 21 takeaways. And then Kansas City is tied 18th, which actually equates to 24 teams. So they are 24th overall with 14 takeaways. Giveaways, for as much as Twitter and the national media talks about Josh Allen being a turnover machine and an interception machine, well, look at that. Both teams have given the ball away 20 times, which is tied for 24th in the NFL. And then for the differential, Buffalo is tied for 14th with a +1 turnover differential, and Kansas City is 26th with a -6 differential. So when I saw that, I was like, do you think ESPN is going to be talking about this? No, because they are going to talk about, oh, is Josh Allen going to throw 3 interceptions on this vaunted Chiefs defense? Come on, get out of here with that. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah, I mean, the turnovers are an issue in receiving them and giving them away in the terms for the Chiefs. Like, they're a big issue for them, like more of an issue because they're not getting them. So they're really seeing some 26. I mean, if that continues, that is a huge in favor for the Bills with the way that the turnover breakdowns are going right now. So there's just a lot to really digest when it comes to this game. And that's why I'm really looking forward to having our guest on here. So he's going to bring it from a Kansas City perspective. I want to know what the mojo inside there. I mean, they're as down as they've been too. And that's 2 games above the Bills, and they're feeling very similar. So their bar is set so high that their 8 wins feels like 6 wins to us. They're kind of saying the same things that we're saying here about our team that they're saying with 8 wins. So, I mean, I don't know how they'd feel with back-to-back losses, 1 in Arrowhead going to 8-5. They're starting to feel like they're losing control of their own division, even though, they don't have much competition there. It must be nice to have that kind of buffer. Must be how Miami's feeling right now with having a 3-game lead. They have a 2-game lead. So it's got to be similar feelings to Kansas City right now as you look through your schedule.